Please welcome Dr. Lesley Carmichael.
Thanks. Thank you. You know when you have a million windows open forever and ever and you haven't rebooted in about 6 months and it's kind of slow, so just hold on a second. Oh yeah, okay. So I've called this speech integration with bots, the good, the odd, and the ugly. So I'm going to give some flavor of each of those in a moment here. Okay, so I'll just start talking. So, all right, I think it's coming. Okay. Sorry for the delay. And I shouldn't kick any cords. Okay, so in general terms, when you just think about speech versus text, speech is generally great for things like hand-free situations. So, you need to be in your car, or, you're otherwise busy, you're in the kitchen cooking, and, you're in the middle of a recipe. It's also very good for synchronous and multi-turn conversation. So when there's a circumstance where the entire conversation can unfold, and there's time and opportunity for that to unfold, that's a great opportunity to be using speech. But that's not very helpful for asynchronous things. So, when you're thinking about productivity, you want to be able to get things done in lots of different circumstances. You're waiting in line for something, you're on the subway, whatever. And so in cases like that, having an interaction that starts with speech but cannot gracefully be continued using text ends up being a problem. And also speech can be very helpful for the speed of task completion. So sometimes, texting, writing out text can take an awful lot of time. Text, however, is better for other things like for privacy. So, it can be a little awkward to be at the airport and you have some kind of task that is optimally done in speech because it's faster, but you feel awkward because you're in a situation where that's not really so comfortable. Text also has an audit trail. So if you're interacting, with a bot, for example, and you've typed something, or if you're just in Facebook Messenger and you type something and some bot proactively pops up to offer you something, you can then just scroll right back up and go look at what you wrote and say, oh, okay, I can see how that popped up right now. Whereas with speech, you don't have the benefit of an audit trail sometimes, depending on the type of device or interface that you're working with. Also, text is better when you're going to be in a noisy environment. So the environment, room like this that's kind of cavernous, depending on the microphone array and the device and so on, you can have different levels of quality and accuracy with speech, and so text is more reliable. And I already mentioned asynchronous task completion. But what we really want to talk about is, okay, that's the general case, but what about speech versus text for your bot? And so I'm going to talk about these different areas. Behavioral trends, speech ephemerality and the creep factor. The type of bot that you have will lend itself better to speech versus text in some cases. What happens when you have a speech-only UI, for example, Alexa. And also I'm going to talk about the elephant in the room, and when I get there, you'll know exactly what it is. So for behavioral trends, I already mentioned how speech can be awkward in public. Another thing is there's this assumption that younger people are more accustomed to touch and speech-based types of interactions with devices. So of course they're just going to adopt everything. And as they grow up, they're going to be using speech all the time, whether it's at the airport or anything else. But that's actually quite a general assumption. I was talking with Mimi last night, and she raised this great point. That while younger people are generally more comfortable with those types of modes and interactions, they're also quite private. So teenagers, are in a situation where they're establishing their own identity and are going to be less likely to sit in their parents' home and start talking out loud to a bot about something personal. They're going to be more likely to type and kind of protect their privacy. And also behavioral trends really vary across regions and across language groups and things like that. So there isn't really a one-size-fits-all, and all of these are considerations when thinking about whether you should have speech powering your bot or not. So speech ephemerality and the creep factor. So imagine that you are, today you have to you activate the echo by saying Alexa, Alexa. But imagine a day when you're talking with Alexa and it's a speech-only UI, and now bots have an opportunity to also have trigger words and jump in, in appropriate moments. I mean, can you imagine you say, remind me in a conversation in your living room, or the word Uber comes up, or reschedule, or takeout, or something like that, and then something, jumps in. So you're chilling out with a friend, and you're talking about plans to go out later, and one of you says, oh, when we go out later, let's take Uber instead of drive. So what if suddenly in that moment Alexa speaks up and says, would you like me to call an Uber for you? That has creep factor for so many reasons. For starters, it seems like, it feels like you've been eavesdropped on, and that's just extremely uncomfortable. And if you're in the flow of a conversation and a bot jumps in based on something you said, that it may not have enough context. So if it's trigger word, because the device really can't, at least there are laws, we can't really just have something constantly listening to everything that you're doing without you being aware that that's happening. So speech is ephemeral, and people also don't remember precisely what they said all the time. So you get this, wait, I didn't say anything that made that happen. And when, sorry about that. So you can't easily go back and see what you might have said that triggered the bot to do what it did. Text-based communication has an audit trail, like I mentioned before. So if the bot is just tuning in for a trigger word, the other thing is that it may not have enough context. So if you were talking with your friend about plans for taking an Uber later tonight for something, but it's only noon, and the thing jumps in and says, oh, hey, you want me to call an Uber for you? Then that's also just creepy and awkward because it doesn't have the right context to do that. So you have these compounding problems of the eavesdropping effect and the ephemerality of speech, and having a harder time being able to kind of trace back what you said that might have caused some kind of interaction. And then also this context effect. If the bot did actually go back and process the fact that 10 sentences ago you said, let's go out at 7 o'clock, and then later you said, hey, we should have an Uber instead of drive, and then the bot popped up and said, would you like me to call an Uber for you at 7 o'clock? That would also really creep people out. So different types of bots. These last few days, a whole lot of really interesting categorizations and distinctions have been mentioned by a lot of different people. So this notion of bots that chat versus bots that do is a way that I heard this characterized yesterday. Also broadcast versus catalog, and then you have task completion bots, customer service bots, conversational chat. So there's really no one-size-fits-all for using speech. In conversational chat, this is the type of context that I mentioned at the beginning when there's a genuine multi-turn experience to be had, and it can be done in a synchronous fashion, like all at the same time, then that can be quite effective. For a task completion bot, it may or may not be awkward or appropriate to do something, depending on the type of task. The type of task might be something that you actually want to get done on the side when you're just in line for something and so on, and the type of task that you may invoke when you're likely to be in a public place. So that would not really be an optimal time for using speech. And also the bot type interacts with the device type. So a speech-only UI like Alexa, depending on the type of task you're trying to get done and whether you have other modes, that can have an impact. So you would not want to, for example, ask a speech-only UI you wouldn't ask a general query and then want to review a whole set of results, because a speech-only UI can't show you those results. There's no screen, you can't quickly move through those things, and so therefore having like speech as your modality in that case doesn't help you get anything done quickly at all, because it would actually it would be quite cumbersome to get through those results. And there's also this concept of bot versus personal assistant. So a bot takes action on your behalf for a specific thing. That's a theme that's really come up here about the, having like a narrow and well-defined task being a really effective way for bots to work. But then there's the notion of personal assistant. So we have things like Cortana out there, we have Siri out there. And these types of things, they know you, they have access to your calendar, they probably have your credit card number, and things like that. And they're able to take action on your behalf for many things, including spending your money. And sometimes they can do this without confirming with you because you've given some kind of blanket general permission and so on. But another theme that's come up here in the last couple of days is this notion of trust, and that you have to build that trust with your bot, between the bot and the users. Well, what we're going to see happening is bots being able to get utilized through personal assistants, and so now these lines get blurred. You already have trust with your personal assistant, but you may not have trust or know the bot that's actually completing a task behind the scenes there. So this is, I think, going to be an interesting space for sorting out what's going on there, and then also the data management around that. If you are talking with your personal assistant because you're comfortable doing that and you're comfortable knowing how that data is treated, as third-party bots come in behind the scene behind that, do you have a good understanding of the data management and what's happening there? So speech-only UI, there's no screen to show or confirm speech recognition results before a bot takes any action. Text-to-speech readout of the recognition adds time to the task. You only get one result presented to you, so this gives tech providers a lot of power. One of the examples, that's I heard talking with some people yesterday is how, unless you specify to Alexa, play Bouquet Shade on Spotify, then Alexa will just go look for Bouquet Shade in Amazon's music, and if it's not there, we'll simply tell you that it doesn't exist. So there's quite a power play there when the device situation is such that it's only a speech UI. It means that you don't have a lot of opportunity of variety in results, and then providers end up making choices for you. Also, these things are possibly good for good practical jokes. I recall Jesse Robbins offering an idea for a good practical joke in these early and somewhat awkward times of bot tech, where he was suggesting that you walk into a friend's home and immediately shout, "Alexa, order 3,000 live crickets to be shipped overnight," immediately. By default. Yep. And so even if you go and you delete the order, now there's some metadata somewhere that you've got this deep affinity for, thinking that you want to buy live crickets and then canceling that order. And who knows what'll pop up on your recommended items in the future. Huh? More crickets. So here's the elephant in the room. I think privacy is a pretty important topic for this, and in particular for speech. So, speech is a special data type under various laws globally, and in particular when it comes to kids. And COPPA is the Child Online Privacy Protection Act, and this applies to operators of online services and apps who specifically are directing their services at children, but it also has language in COPPA that says if they are aware that they are collecting personal information from kids. And so speech is considered a personally identifying signal as a biometric signal in this particular law, and this is just one law of many around the world. So what it means is that someone who is providing one of these types of services cannot store voice recordings without consent and must be able to provide parental access and deletion upon request. So what's interesting here is you look across the landscape of all of our companies and technologies. Siri ads feature the cookie monster. Alexa ads frequently show kid scenarios engaging in the home. The Google Home promo video, which recently came out, shows school kids talking to it. And, do they say that they're directly targeting to kids? I don't know, but these are the kinds of things where we have to be mindful in how we're designing this, and speech adds an extra layer of complexity there. And also, it does raise the question of what about third-party users of available services. So, you know, Microsoft, we have great APIs where people can utilize speech and language understanding technologies. And if third parties are directing what they're using that to toward kids, then there would be an issue because the terms of use, you know, for some of these APIs, you know, specify the age at which you can target things and that sort of thing. So this is it's an area that I think should not be overlooked in bot development and understanding the data management that's going along with it. So integrating speech into bots, how would you do it right? And I would say enable speech instead of typing as long as these conditions are true. So if the user can read, edit, or confirm the speech recognition before a bot takes action, especially if it might be spending your money. Improve the speech recognition accuracy by training the engine on the most probable language for the bot. So the type of task or the type of situation that's going to be used. And also utilizing understanding and intent models, and not just a domain language model, but also looking at the broader intent context to get a richer and better recognition. And also not allowing bot messages to be read out loud using text-to-speech synthesis to the user without consent, because the user might be in a public place sometimes and not other times, and if you have something like that that's just a default thing that you're setting up, then that can be problematic. So that's all I had to say. Thank you. Sure, I can take a few questions.
I don't really have a question except to just thank you, because I've spent a lot of time recently talking to VCs and people like that who are currently obsessed by voice as a sort of default space of the world, trying to articulate the distinction between times you might want to use text versus voice has proven very difficult in some of these occasions.
Thanks, and yeah, I don't want speech to be like the spinning GIFs of the old days, you know? When people first came up with spinning GIFs, everybody was excited about plastering their websites with them, and I know I've just dated myself by saying that, but anyway. Any other questions? Yes? I'll do a demo for you next time. Yes? Well, actually, just in traditional speech recognition engines, the way they work today, we actually can accommodate for a lot of disfluencies already. So a little tidbit that might be interesting to you is that the most common trigram in the English language is I. Because a lot of people will start a sentence and say, I think that we should something. So when we put the recognition results into your document, if you're dictating your email or something, we just say, I think so-and-so. And we don't, you know, actually literally capture your disfluencies in the display form that we produce to you. So some of that is already taken care of in the way that we design the systems. But in the case that you're talking about, that's where examples like that would be valuable training data. And there would be machine learning to benefit from that and improve those models over time. Yes, you were first. Experience what? Uh-huh. Okay, yeah, the question, sorry, I did not repeat the other ones. The question was, what do you think we will get to a point of bot fatigue, where just like there's kind of an app fatigue, You know, there's an app for everything, and it's hard to keep track of it all, et cetera. Will we get to a point of bot fatigue? And I think the answer is probably most certainly. And that is, you know, the reason why I had mentioned the integration of personal assistants and bots. I can see how, as personal assistants become more integrated into people's lives, that's where a trust factor gets built up, and then bots can be the task-specific, excellent tools at getting things done that can improve the quality of the experience for your personal assistant. I think that's one direction that all of this could go. The other thing that comes to mind with your question is, I think it was about 6,000 times over the last 36 hours I've heard the topic of discoverability raised. And so that's probably something that would factor in as well if you know, apps over time ended up having marketplaces that help facilitate finding the apps that you want and so on. And so, you know, maybe bots will have some solution like that as well. But yeah, if they don't and they're not very discoverable, then accessing the power of bots through interfaces that you're more familiar with may well be key. Just like Facebook Messenger is, you know, one of the places where it's a familiar place, and then bots are accessible through that. Okay, sure, one more, yeah.
From what you can see in your own data, are users switching into a kind of artificial voice agent syntax, or are they speaking very naturally? You know, the way that we all have our own like artificial Google search syntax that we learn, are people learning something similar for voice agents, or are they speaking very naturally?
So the question was about the speaking style adapting to voice agents over time. So how is that changing? And yes, we can definitely use comparisons with the way that people, when the industry first could speech enable even things like web search, people would still just speak a string of keywords. And you know, it took showing examples to people and things like that to start to get a natural language approach to show up more. We see people talk to Cortana in a very natural way. So that's a direction that it moves in, and I think, you know, yesterday there was a talk from Pullstring talking about the most important thing is, you know, hire great writers and make sure that you have, you know, these arcs and the way that the conversation should flow, and the bot can guide the conversation and all that kind of stuff. So the very nature of like how these interactions will go and these themes that I'm seeing over the last few days, I imagine that the language that people use with bots will adapt very quickly. And even looking in the samples that Lily was showing from Xiao Ice, you could see a very conversational, natural style that wasn't, you know, so terse of, you know, just finding out information, getting an answer. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you.